Vishvatma Lokaveda Patanugaha Aman Shisheve Dvavatyam Asakta Sankyam Astitaha
Bhagavan, personality of Godhead. Api, soul of the universe. Veda, Vedic principles. Atta, Anuga, following the path. Kaman, the necessities of life. Shishive, enjoyed. Dvarvatyam, in the city of Dwarka. Asakta, without being attached. Sankyam, knowledge in Sankhya philosophy. Astitaha, being situated. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Simultaneously, the personality of Godhead enjoyed life in the city of Dwarka, strictly in conformity with the Vedic customs of society. He was situated in detachment and knowledge as enunciated by the Sankhya system of philosophy. Simultaneously, the personality of Godhead enjoyed life in the city of Dwarka, strictly in conformity with the Vedic customs of society. He was situated in detachment and knowledge as enunciated by the Sankhya system of philosophy. Purport. While Maharaj Yudhishthira was the emperor of the earth, Lord Sri Krishna was the king of Dwarka and was known as Dwarkadish. Like other subordinate kings, he was under the regime of Maharaj Yudhishthira. Although Lord Sri Krishna is the supreme emperor of the entire creation, while he was on this earth, he never violated the principles of Vedic injunctions because they are the guide for human life. Regulated human life, according to the Vedic principles, which are based on the system of knowledge called Sankhya philosophy, is the real way of enjoyment of the necessities of life. Without such knowledge, detachment, and custom, the so-called human civilization is no more than an animal society of eat, drink, be merry, and enjoy. The Lord was acting freely as he willed, yet by his practical example, he taught not to lead a life which goes against the principles of detachment and knowledge. Attainment of knowledge and detachment, as very elaborately discussed in Sankhya philosophy, is the real perfection of life. Knowledge means to know that the mission of the human form of life is to end all the miseries of material existence, and that in spite of having to fulfill the bodily necessities in a regulated way, one must be detached from such animal life. Fulfilling the demands of the body is animal life, and fulfilling the mission of the spirit soul is the human mission. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunautam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhischa Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukam Karoti Vachalam, Bhangayati Girim, Kripatam Hamadeshi, Gurundinataranam. Hare Krishna Maharaj, I feel like Rama Harshana sitting in front of yourself and Ramrai Prabhu. Oh man, Kavi Chandra Maharaj.
Microphone more loud.
So take my shoe out.
Spaghetti, put it on the floor. More spaghetti on the floor.
That's enough?
Now please go on.
Okay.
I have used glass for a long time. So I'll soak it up. Get the nectar.
Today is a special day, Vamana Dwadasi, and it's also the appearance day of Jiva Goswami. And when I was looking over all this stuff for this class, I found it nicely ties in with this verse. Bhagavanapi Vishvatma Loka Veda Panudgaha Kaman Shishive Dvarvatvam Ashakta Shankam Ashtita. The personality of Godhead enjoyed life in the city of Dwarka, strictly in conformity with the Vedic customs of society. He was situated in detachment and knowledge, as enunciated in the Sankhya system of philosophy. So the Sankhya system of philosophy breaks things down. In the 11th canto, Krishna is telling Uddhava how different philosophers break things down, but more or less, you have all these different material elements, perhaps starting with earth, and then you have the subtle material elements, and then you have all these different parts of the material universe, and then all those put together, then there's things outside the material universe, which is essentially just the Lord and the Lord's part and parcels and things connected with the Lord. And so the whole point of Shankya philosophy is to show us the difference between all of these, and that when we can realize that we're actually different from these bodies, different from this material world, then with that knowledge we can become detached from this material world and regain our position in the spiritual world. And so therefore there's this Veda Pata Anuga, or people that follow the path of the Vedas. And the Vedic society, Vedic customs lay out a way that we can actually realize this, what the Shankya system of philosophy is telling us. And therefore, Lord Krishna shows an example when he's in Dwarka, or even wherever he is actually, when he's showing us how to follow this so we can actually go back to Godhead, go back to the spiritual world, which is completely opposite of this world. And in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 3rd chapter, he's explaining to Arjuna, Arjuna's saying he wants to not do his Kshatriya Dharma, which is like Vedic customs. He doesn't want to fight in the war. And he's saying one reason Arjuna doesn't want to fight is because, well, if I kill all these people, then what's going to happen to the customs that they're going to perform? Then we're going to get Varna Shankara, then we're going to get all these problems in society, and none of the good work of society won't be followed. And then so Krishna argues back in the 3rd chapter. He's saying, well, actually, I don't have to do anything, but I follow all my duties, because if I would not to follow them, if I failed to perform my prescribed Vedic customs and duties, then people would take that, everyone looks at great people and yada yada chariti shrestha. They take their actions as an example and they follow them. And so Krishna's saying, if I would put a bad example like that, then actually I would be at fault for ruining the customs of society and creating unwanted progeny. So therefore you should actually do your duty as a Kshatriya and fight, because if you don't, because you're such a great person, people will use that as an example and give an excuse. Oh, sir, why aren't you doing your duty? Oh, because Arjuna didn't do his duty. He was a Kshatriya and he was able to fight, but he refused to fight. So I'm not gonna wash the pots. But so, anyways, or whatever duties that they would have. And Prabhupada says in the purport that although Krishna is above all the regulations and revealed scriptures, he doesn't do anything that violates them. So he's giving us a nice example. And so we see that in the city of Dwarka, he does that. And there's so many different Vedic customs which are rooted in, this knowledge, and it just like completely contrasts with today's modern culture. Like in the second chapter of the Gita, Krishna is explaining how for like an enlightened person that is actually in knowledge, what is daytime or awakening for them is nighttime for everyone else, and what is the time of awakening for everyone else is nighttime for them. Or in other words, what they see through knowledge, everyone else kind of sees it in a complete ignorant way, like the opposite. So for example, we have, just in terms of awakening and sleeping, this is called New York City, the city that never sleeps, because you can always find a bar or a club or whatever open practically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just because there's so many people and they have some urge to do something like that, and so it's all open. But actually, if people following a more Vedic society, here in the temple, everyone rises very early. Most people rise by 4 a.m. And if you go to a place like Vrindavan, a lot of the shops and everything close down much earlier because they want to get up early. They like getting up early. They don't value staying up late. Actually, maybe you could say sometimes in Vrindavan, these cities are getting more and more contaminated because people come with like a party attitude and want to stay up late. But if they're actually following the Vedic customs, it will go to sleep very early. You have all these restaurants. This is another thing against Vedic society, where normally we're supposed to have sattvic mode of goodness, things that increase our health, that don't get us entangled in so much karma. Krishna says that those eat food that has been offered in sacrifice get purified by that, but everyone else is just eating sinful reactions. They're just gaining karma, and it's going to come back to bite them. And like there's that story of in one of these East Asian countries, they have this, the devotees live nearby, and every time the devotees would fry stuff in ghee, the neighbors would always complain because they thought it smelled disgusting. But then these are the same people that all the rats and all the dead animals that they find, they collect and they keep it in a pot for a long time until everything just merges together, and then they think that that's like some delicacy like sauce that they want to put on everything. So you just have this completely opposite mentality. Or cow protection versus cow killing. There's so many religious people, so-called religious people in America, but then they don't understand how, we shouldn't harm other living entities, so they don't really even think twice. They even think it's proper, it's culture to, have a civilization centered around killing cows in slaughterhouse. What to speak of chaste women in Vedic society versus the horse-like women of today. Like they're wearing high-heeled shoes, clap, 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 and they're holding their head very high, and they have long hair, and when they laugh, it sounds like the laugh, the neighing of a mare, of a horse. I was just reading how Radharani, she's always has the veil of shyness. Shyness is actually, that's where women get their strength, not from trying to flaunt everything. But because this modern society is not rooted in any kind of proper philosophy, proper detachment and knowledge, then therefore they don't have that. Or the brahmachari gurukul versus now the schools they have. When I was in school, I probably missed out on 90% of what I could have learned because they mix men and women, and then that's all the kids are thinking about is, how can I how can Mary meet Mark and whatever, and these different things. So this connects with Vaman Dev very nicely. Today's Vaman Dwadasi. So this verse is talking about detachment and knowledge, how Krishna is strictly in conformity with the Vedic customs of society. And so when Vamana Dev went to Bali Maharaj to beg some land, he builds it up, kind of telling Bali Maharaj, hey, no one in your entire dynasty has ever refused a request of charity, and even till today, you're still famous for that. And you have so many great personalities, like he mentions Hiranyaksha and different things. And so he builds that up, and then it seems like he's gonna, if you build someone up like that, it seems like you're gonna ask for something impossible. But but actually I just want 3 paces of land. So he builds everything up, like no one's ever refused. So whatever I say, whatever I ask for, you have to give it to me. Like otherwise you're gonna ruin your reputation. But I just want, I'm a dwarf, I'm a small little guy, and I just want 3 steps of land. Which, I mean, we know that was a trick, but at least it seems very, very funny. But, and after Bali Maharaj is arguing with him saying, well, what the heck, I possess everything. I could give you a whole planet, I could give you a whole island, I could give you whatever you need, maidservants and things to make you comfortable. Like, please, And Vamanadeva's response was, okay, you could give me everything, but even if someone doesn't learn how to be content with the bare necessities, then even if you have everything, you have every single car, you have every single house, every single woman, every single nice plot of land, all the best food, everyone is your servant. Like, if you're not able to be content, the mind will still want more. Krishna says that lust burns like fire. So what is the nature of fire? That whatever you put into the fire, it can just burn it and grow bigger. We have a small little ghee lamp that we're offering, but if somehow or other someone were to misuse that, and accidentally start a fire, it could potentially consume the whole building. They actually, at the end of the universe, it's just a big fire that consumes the whole universe. So fire is like that. It's one of the things that, of 3 things that you should immediately deal with, that Chanakya Pandit says. If you get a disease, immediately deal with it. If you have some debt, immediately deal with it. And if there's a fire, even if it's small, you should immediately deal with it. And so our lust, our desire to want to enjoy things is like a fire. And so even Vamanadeva is saying, even if you have the whole universe, if you possess all of it, if you don't know how to be content, detached, then you can't have this. It won't satisfy you. And so, the Vedic customs, the Vedic culture, they're there to help us try to aim at being satisfied with the bare necessities. Rishabdev explains to his sons that we got this body because of doing our past misdeeds. We performed, we wanted to do sense gratification, we wanted to try to enjoy our senses, and ultimately there was some problem and we had to perform some sinful activities, and we're suffering in this current material body because of our previous actions. So therefore, why would we engage in sense gratification now with what we have this material body, if that's just going to guarantee us more suffering in our future body? Why not actually, do divine austerity, figure out how to actually be content with the bare minimum of life and work towards as Prabhupada puts it here, fulfilling the mission of the spirit soul, rather than just descending into animal life, trying to chase the goal of sense gratification. And this is actually Vedic custom, Vedic culture, it actually works. Like today, you can just see in a simple example, a kid, our mind can be molded and to be content with our situation. You look like now, there's a thing called the Nintendo Switch, which is like the newest kind of Game Boy. Or everyone probably knows what a Game Boy is. At least when I was growing up, that was we had these little Game Boys. And Nintendo Switch. I was just visiting home and all my friends had it. And it's pretty cool, but it's like you're just playing, the kid is just plugged in, playing some electronic thing, and he's probably not actually as happy as some kid in a village that just has some bike tire and a stick and is just hitting it along and laughing and running with his friends. If you actually are put with the bare minimum, then the mind can actually be content with that. I mean, once you make a comparison though, then if that kid playing with the tire and the stick, if he sees that Game Boy, then he's going to be really frustrated. Unless he's actually situated in proper knowledge, proper detachment, then he can stay away from it. But otherwise, if he then starts comparing things, then the mind's like, oh, that looks better than what we're doing, let's try to do that. But actually, he was probably happy before, plus he's playing with something and he's getting exercise. Whereas the Nintendo Switch person is going to hurt their back and so many different antisocial problems and obese and all these things that we're seeing come out today. But they think that the mind thinks that it's going to be happy with that, but it's actually not. They think, they just want the next game, and when the next system comes out, they want to get that, and it's never enough. So we all, Vamana Dev is teaching us we should all learn this contentment. Like in New York, there's so many restaurants that probably have really good tasting food, but for one, we should understand that most of them have meat, and that causes the suffering of others, and thus will entangle us more and more in suffering. And that even if we eat the grains and everything, like Krishna says, they can only increase our discontentment with life. Those who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat sin. So if we can be satisfied with what prasadam is available at the temple, I mean, we don't have to starve ourselves. There's nice things Bipin's cooking every day with ghee in the morning, and there's a nice restaurant. We can get lasagna, and there's so many things. So if we can be satisfied with what's simply available for us, that's very good for our mind. Not that we have to be like a Buddhist and completely detached. Like Ayendra Prabhu learned about karma, and so he thought, I don't want to get more karma, so he was trying to just eat like 1 or 2 figs a day or something like that, just to try to like barely stay alive. But then when he found out he could eat prasadam, then it was, he talks about how he had a whole like 2-liter cup of sweet rice, strawberry sweet rice. That was a Sunday feast every Sunday. So, or whatever we earn at our jobs, if you give 50%, if you just plan whatever I make, 50% is going to go towards Krishna somehow. Then with the other 50%, it's basically, I mean, especially nowadays, that's practically enough for the bare minimum. You don't really have much more to spend. But even if you're making enough, if you're at least giving that, that's the sacrifice, and that will help you realize, oh, Krishna is actually the proprietor of everything. It'll help you realize this detachment and force you to be content. Bhoktaram Jagat Tapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. Krishna controls everything, and so. If we don't recognize that, then we're like a thief. And similarly, in the brahmacharya ashram or whatever, if we're collecting donations, every penny should be spent. Okay, I'm spending this, and whatever I'm getting is directly, either the bare necessities that I need to get by, or it's going towards service for Krishna in some way. In a temple like this, we don't really have to worry so much. Prabhupada. Sometimes it said you shouldn't overcollect or overeat. But here it's like, we have like an elevator that needs $250,000 to get installed. That's going to take a while to collect, especially. Or so many festivals that we perform every year. We just had Janmashtami and Radhastami, and I guess now it's kind of like, soon it'll be Kartik and Govardhan Puja, and then it'll kind of be the festival bowl for a second. And then you've got Gaur Purnima, and our Nityananda Chaudhary, and then our Shingadev. So there's always, practically almost every month, there's some big festival that unlimited resources can be poured into to promote and to have a grand thing. And so, but one point is that some of these Vedic customs, they're for the point to get us to this knowledge and detachment, but actually bhakti, Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jana Yatyasu Vairagyam Jnanam Chad Ahoitukam. That devotional service, if we're performing pure devotional service, it automatically gives us detachment and knowledge. And we can see like whatever detachment that someone might have, actually those who are performing devotional service at the highest level, they're seen to have the highest level of detachment. And we can see that in like the lives of maybe Srila Prabhupada, before he went to India and after he went to India. No matter what situation he was in, if he was really, really wealthy or he was completely dirt poor, he was always doing the exact same thing. He was so detached, it didn't actually change his fixed vision, because he's fixed on something higher. He's fixed on serving Krishna. He had no desire for his own sense gratification. So being detached from this and that, like we have these other swamis that would come, they would get so many women disciples and then they would just take advantage of them, or take advantage of the money. Where Prabhupada was like, you know, someone was saying his like monthly salary was like so less, it ended up being like $100 or something like that. And he would just use it on the minimum. All the other money would be going to printing books, building temples, and helping his society somehow. And of course today is Jiva Goswami's appearance. And Jiva Goswami is also an exemplar of being very detached. It says the Goswami slept under a different tree every night in Vrindavan. And specifically, Jiva Goswami is a good example of knowledge as well. One amazing thing, so if you look at Veda Vyas, he's considered like the incarnation of transcendental knowledge, more or less. He wrote almost all of the Shastras. If you take all the Vedas and you take all the Puranas and the Mahabharata that he wrote, that's like 500,000, maybe a little more, 500,000 verses. And then the times, I don't know exactly the time span that Veda Vyas wrote it, but he's still alive. He's a Dwapara Yuga, person, and has an extremely long lifetime. And I'm sure he spent more than what Jiva Goswami spent. Jiva Goswami lived around 80 years, 85 years, and from the time he was educated till the time of his departure, he managed to compose over 400,000 shlokas in various different works and commentaries, which that's like almost the same as Vyasadeva, but in a much extremely compressed time. And it's just amazing how much knowledge that he had, that he could just come out. And Prabhupada just saying how there's many people that say how he's like, even not amongst the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, but just amongst the general scholarly community, there's no really Sanskrit scholar that can match him or equal him. He made the Sat Sandarbhas, which kind of fully explain all knowledge, starting from how do we know what we know, going all the way to, the different conclusions of devotional service. So, on this happy occasion of Vaman Dwadasi, we're hearing about how the Supreme Personality of Godhead enjoyed life in the city of Dwarka, strictly in conformity with the Vedic customs of society. He was situated in detachment and knowledge, as enunciated by the Sankhya system of philosophy. Like, we hear about Krishna doing so many things, like one Vedic custom for householders is giving charity. So Krishna, every day, it said that he would give multiple groups of 13,084 cows. I don't know exactly why 13,084 specifically, but he would give that to brahmanas and qualified people. And he wouldn't, it wasn't like, sometimes people say, they call the temple, we have this car, the transmission doesn't work, and it's going to need a new set of tires, and it's going to, you're going to replace the windshield, but we want to donate to you, please take it. And it's like everyone, like once they use something completely, then they think about Krishna, and then they think, I can't do anything else, I might as well take it to the junkyard, or I can get some punya by, giving it to Krishna. So generally, devotees aren't thinking, or people in general don't think about what to give the first class thing in charity. But Krishna shows the example. He's giving these cows and explaining that the cows are fresh mothers. They just had a calf. The calf's still with them and comes with them, and their horns have gold on them. Their hoofs have silver on them. They're wearing a pearl necklace, and a nice big silk blanket is over them. And you can imagine the value if you're giving 13,000 such cows. It's like like millions and millions of dollars just as one donation, and he's doing this multiple times, and he's doing it every single day, trying to give something first class. Or Krishna's always, he's trying to get all his different samskars done for his children, trying to get them married, or he even did the last rites for Kamsa. Have you guys heard that? I think I'm remembering that. I didn't research that. He actually did the last rites for Kamsa after he killed Kamsa because he was actually related to him. And Narada Muni sees him coming and sees him actually, he wakes up early in the morning and his beautiful wives are angry that he's getting up, and they want to try to embrace him more and keep him in bed longer. But because he's showing the perfect example of this Vedic culture, he gets up and immediately after washing his teeth, washing his hands, he sits down and does proper meditation and sadhana. Well, he doesn't, for him it's not sadhana, but he's showing the example for all of us. And so we should take this a good example of Krishna and give it to the world. That's actually what the point of, the way that the Vedic customs teach us is through the system of Varnashram Dharma. So when Prabhupada was asked, like, are you guys a Hindu? He would say different things, but sometimes he would say, no, Hindu is actually like a foreigner's word to describe it, but actually what it is actually Varnashram Dharma. And so that's, if we follow the different customs according to the different varnas and ashrams, whatever one we're situated in, and we help others do that, that'll help bring about people living this culture of this Sankhya philosophy. And then ultimately, like Ramananda Roy is saying, we perform pure devotional service, which is completely beyond Varnashram Dharma, then we can have the ultimate detachment and the ultimate knowledge, which is of our eternal relationship with Krishna, and awaken that. And with that, there's nothing that can detach you or sway you from pursuing it, because it's the highest thing. And so we should remember Vamana Dev's instruction to Bali Maharaj that you should be satisfied with whatever we get, because if we don't learn the art of being satisfied with the bare necessities, even the entire universe will not be enough to satisfy us. And we should also pray for Jiva Goswami's mercy, that we can understand more about devotional service and how to preach to others. I would like to end the class now, and there's so many senior devotees, if maybe they have anything to say about Vamana Dev or Jiva Goswami or anything that they're inspired to. Hare Krishna. Chaitanya. Give it to Maharaj first.
Anyone Bhagavatam class, Prabhupada was saying that in Vedic times there wasn't need of hotels or restaurants, because every village, every town, speaking of big cities, would have a temple or temples, and everything, all aspects of the life of the town and the village was based around the temple. So they'd always be prashadam, and it wasn't for sale, it was for donation, give what you can. And they would have dharmashalas, ashrams for the pilgrims coming to the temple to stay. So it's a very interesting revelation how we see hotels and restaurants are actually a product of godless society. And it's a God-conscious society, things are no longer necessary.
Yeah, only nonsense is done in the hotels, and only sin comes out of the restaurants.
What you say, son?
Only godless things are done in the hotels.
Where's the microphone for the camera?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No, it's all right. I tried to listen to his class the other day, but through no sound.
Yeah, we have to try to remember that. Yeah, people only get a hotel room for a few different reasons. And, you know, if we, like I was saying, if you're going to a restaurant, I mean, you know, the grains, whoever cooks the grains, like their consciousness goes into that. And Lord Chaitanya says if you're eating those grains, then they're just going to make your mind become wicked, which it means that you're not going to be able to be content with what's in the temple. And if you're not able to be content with what's in the temple, then your mind's going to be disturbed. You're not going to be peaceful. You're going to want to try to change your situation somehow. And if your mind's so uncontent, then you're going to want to leave the temple. You're going to leave devotional service. And it all just that, you know, one of the roots of that is simply just taking the grains cooked by non-devotees, because they're going to have so many non-devotional thoughts that are automatically going to be for some lusty desire that they want to fulfill. And so that's going to contaminate your mind. And so therefore the restaurants are, you know, really, really bad. Or even like the British, to like break down the Vedic culture, one thing they did is introduce tea taking. Those may seem like a very small thing, but that was one of their plots to actually destroy the culture. And, you know, now it worked. Now everyone, you know, drinks tea there and has tea biscuits and is, you know, addicted to intoxications. So Prabhupada is very heavy, no tea. And when you tell people that, sometimes they're surprised. What? You know, I guess I can understand no meat eating and I guess no illicit sex, but and no intoxication. But what? No tea?
But not any tea, right?
Even sometimes, if devotees were drinking tea and it wasn't like, there was like even like herbal tea, he was like even against like the habit of drinking tea. He would comment, like some devotees were saying they wanted to drink tulsi tea, and his main objection was, no, I don't want you to develop a habit for drinking tea, because that in itself is like a nonsense habit. Gopal Champu, do you have anything to say? Maybe any questions or comments, Maharaj?
Jiva Goswami sent out the first book distribution team.
Here.
So, saying Jiva Goswami sent out the first team to distribute books, so we can act on behalf of those distributors he sent out today and try to do a little something in his memory.
Like Prabhupada wanted our temples to be Prasad.
Yeah.
We're not doing very good at that.
Yeah, we gotta work on that.
But the remnants are there, like churches, and they have kitchens, free food, and homeless shelters and stuff. Some, you know,
Yeah.
there's one ashram in Vrindavan way on the other side of Raj. It's also called Ramarini. They have 24 hours, anyone who comes there for some pilgrims going on and
Crazy.
And they can't spend it.
Yeah,
Their
they
whole
could.
life, you know, they couldn't spend it. But they just think you want to get more. So, never satisfied. Like you said, I've seen these kids and they get an old tin can and all filter or something, and they put a wire and push it around and they love it.
Yeah, exactly.
And the kids in the city that have a model Rolls Royce car, electric one.
They're bored after a minute. Yeah.
Right, so Chicago Vindicated,
Yeah.
Mom and Dad, right?
Jai.
Jiva Goswami,
Jai.
So the 1976 Rath Yatra in New York, it was unprecedented and glorious for many reasons. One in particular, there'd been an edict since the early 60s, no new parades on Fifth Avenue. So to get the permit to have the Rath Yatra was quite extraordinary. And Tulsan Krishna Prabhu had secured that from the city officials. So Srila Prabhupada asked, how did you do it? He said, well, Srila Prabhupada, on the description, they wanted a description of what the parade, the procession would be, and I simply filled in 3 hand-pulled carts. And Prabhupada laughed and said, yes, that is in my mind. Just like Lord Mom did. He simply asked for 3 paces of land, and it took the entire universe. So that well, 3 hand-pulled carts, that's not going to be anything. 3 hand-pulled carts were gigantic. It's like the glorious 1973 London Rath Yatra, Prabhupada wrote in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that the Guardian newspaper said that our Rath Yatra cart rivaled the Nelson Monument in Trafalgar Square.
I was just reading a Kripa Prabhu said, and now Krishna asks us only for 3 words. Hare Krishna Rama. And then he takes everything.
That's a good one.
Huh? Kripa Moya description. Krishna saying just chant Hare Krishna Hare Rama in 3 words.
Takes everything. That's good. Wow, that's very nice. I like to hear that. Yeah.
I've heard that that's why so a lot of Hindus in India, they don't worship Krishna. And they think that he's gonna take everything away.
Yeah, I was hearing I think.
We have to cheat the police. We made this huge canopy, cost 3,000 pounds, to cover Trafalgar Square. And we told them just a little tent we have for distributing prasada. We told them that. Then we got permission. We had to cheat it.
Yeah, we're not supposed to be duplicitous. The devotee is supposed to be very simple. But in dealing with non-devotees, it's necessary to be duplicitous. In some cases, like, people always ask, it says we should never take the association of, non-devotees, but what about if we're like, at work or something like that? And so, it's, there's that example of, forgetting his name, he was a very big devotee, and Lord Chaitanya asked him, who is the father, you or your son? And his son was Raghunath Thakur, and he fed Gopal, Mukunda. So he was the king's physician, and he saw when they brought in a peacock fan to fan the king, he saw that and he remembered Krishna, and then he had too much ecstasy, and basically went into an ecstatic trance, and they couldn't get him out for some time, and then they're asking him like, what's going on? So he's thinking, this guy's a Muslim king. If I try to tell him, I was thinking about Krishna because I saw that thing, and then that made me, you can't really say that. So he had to be a little duplicitous. He had to say, I have epilepsy, sometimes I just faint, something like that. So similarly, you can't, even though the devotee is supposed to be simple, they can't be completely straightforward with everything. I was with all my family over like a week ago or something like that for my brother's wedding. It's kind of like you don't want to like upset them so much, so they're asking you all kinds of weird questions. You just what was one question? Someone says, why can't you eat meat? Or like they're like, well, why can't you do that? Why? And it's like, well, don't worry about it. Like you just don't want to get into them, so you don't reveal your heart. You keep very close. You try to just, maybe if you can, give them association, but otherwise, or they're saying, don't talk to that girl over there. She's like, she's anti-abortion, and so it's like, what the heck, So if people have this kind of mind, then you have to actually hide your association from them, and then that way, you definitely won't take their association. All right, it's 9 o'clock. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Pamana Dev ki jai, Shri Jiva Goswami ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Radha Govinda ki jai, Mahaprasade Govinde.